It's 1972, a time when an untested director, a has-been star, and a cast of relative unknowns are about to turn a best-selling novel into an all-time movie classic. I'm Leonard Maltin, and welcome to The Movie Guide, where today we'll be paying our respects to The Godfather.
Yes, we are here with the Movie Guide podcast. I am Dan of the Four Finger Discount Network, joined right now by one half of the network himself, Mr. Guy Davis. How are you, sir?
Hello there, Dando.
And the legend, the myth, the man, he is Leonard Maltin. Leonard, how are you, sir?
I am fine.
Good to hear.
That was much too brief an answer. For somebody who's made a living spinning words together, that was a very terse answer.
Brevity, the soul of wit. We love it.
Well, I believe so. Most people making movies at 2 hours and 40 minutes now don't agree with me. But I'll tell you a film that goes by in a flash. And I can vouch for that because I just revisited it last year at a special screening here in Hollywood at Paramount Studios. And that is The Godfather. It is 2 hours and 55 minutes long. And I swear you don't know where the time goes. It just propels you along with it. And suddenly you're 3 hours older and 3 hours richer for having watched the movie.
I'm glad you said it that way. 3 hours richer is absolutely correct. Yes, Leonard, I'm about to make you an offer you can't refuse because we are about to talk about The Godfather because Francis Coppola is he's back. He's going all in, putting $100 million of his own money into making one of his longtime passion projects, Megalopolis. I believe it's going to be in cinemas, if not this coming week, then certainly before the end of September.
Very soon.
Screened at a few film festivals around the world to, shall we say, mixed reports. It's apparently wildly experimental, wildly ambitious, but we would expect no less from Francis Coppola, who seems to have made a career out of swinging for the fences, and I won't say no more so than with The Godfather, because this is, as the great reviewer Pauline Kael said, almost like the perfect marriage of art and commerce. It's legitimately a masterpiece. I have no qualms about calling it that, but it also, as he said, it's 3 hours and it moves like a bullet. It's an absolute crowd pleaser. It's good every time you watch it.
It's one of those films you can't not watch. If you are doing some surfing, and people still do that at all, with the remote control, and stumble onto it, or one of your favorite streaming networks happens to be showing it, you can't turn away. I defy you to turn this movie off. It has such a propulsive feel, and yet you're not aware of what time is going by. You're not aware of ticking off boxes. Oh, this happens now, and this one gets shot now, and then we're going to have this sequence. It absorbs you fully. It's great storytelling. In fact, it's superb storytelling. And some of that comes directly from Mario Puzo's book. That's what they call a page turner also, that, leaves you in the dust because it is so energetic, but energy that fills any void that you might have as a reader or as a viewer. And now that they've become part of popular culture, I mean, if I say Michael Corleone, people know who I'm talking about. If you say Don Vito Corleone, you know who we're talking about. It's just there. It's part of the zeitgeist, if I can use a fancy word. And yet it's unpretentious. It doesn't present itself to you as oh, here we are, here comes a masterpiece. Sit back and tune up your antenna.
Yeah.
It just takes you. And it takes no prisoners.
I'm glad you mentioned Mario Puzo because we tend to, of course, associate The Godfather with Coppola. But Coppola has always been very, very generous with his source material. I mean, when he adapts something, he'll say, it's not Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula, it's Bram Stoker's Dracula. It's even John Grisham's The Rainmaker. He'll always credit the author.
That's right.
But I'm wondering how familiar you were with Puzo's novel before it actually hit the screen, because it was a bestseller.
It was a tremendous seller. In fact, it was so popular that Pictures used the cover design by Neil Fujita. I had to look that up, who designed the book cover for the hardcover and the paperback versions as the logo for the movie poster. That's very unusual. It doesn't happen very often. But it happened on Jaws, as we discussed not long ago, and it was true for The Godfather, too. Did you see the miniseries, The Offer, Guy?
I did, yes. Yeah, which I found
Did you
really
enjoy
interesting.
it as much as I did?
I found it quite fascinating, and it got better as it went along, I thought. I mean, I'm wondering how much of it is print the legend, given that it's sort of based on the recollections of the producer, Al Ruddy, and he seems to make himself very much the hero of his own story.
Yes, he does, but I think it's largely true, because after seeing that 10-part series and enjoying the performances of Miles Teller as Al Ruddy, and especially Matthew Good as Robert Evans.
Wasn't he fantastic?
That's a performance for the ages. Just blew me out of the water. And we just had the Emmy Awards here as we're recording our conversation last night, and or the night before last. And I'm sorry that he wasn't handed, a prize, a pizza, anything to commemorate that incredible performance.
It really was, because Evans is such a character in his own right. He's almost...
Well, Evans is larger than life, to begin with.
Yeah,
so he had no fear of going over the top.
That's right. No, I thought Matthew Good was just marvelous as Evans. And yeah, I mean, Evans is kind of pivotal in a lot of ways to, I don't know, the birth or the success or the life of The Godfather, even though he clashed quite heavily with Coppola.
Well, we've talked about Jaws and we've talked about The Godfather today now. And here are two films that are on everybody's all-time best list, everybody's favorite list. As you say, a marriage of art and commerce, a perfect marriage. And yet both films were embattled. They did not have a smooth course to run, from the novel to the screenplay to the actual production to the release of the film. And Coppola said yes to directing this because he needed the money.
True.
He needed the money because his protege, George Lucas, was involved in a complicated deal with Warner Brothers, who wanted to be repaid for the losses they suffered on THX 1138. I hope I'm not getting too far into the weeds here.
Not at all.
But apparently George was in the room when the offer was being made to Francis Coppola. And he said, Francis, take the deal.
I love it. George Lucas is Coppola's Tom Hagen.
It's an amazing saga behind the scenes of this one. As I'm sure we're going to find many of the movies we discuss.
Absolutely.
Have these incredible backstories.
Well, the thing about The Godfather as well is that, I mean, I think one of the reasons that we love it is it feels authentic. I mean, it feels like you're actually delving into the lives of the Corleone family. You almost feel like a member of the family, not even by the end of the movie, by the end of the first, not the first act, but certainly the first sequence, that whole wedding thing.
Sure. Oh, yes.
But for a while there, it was like, oh, do we have to cast Italians? Do we have to cast these unknowns? Can't we have, Laurence Olivier as Don Corleone and Ryan O'Neal as Michael? These are the people they wanted. They didn't want all the people who have become legends and icons because of The Godfather.
Today, it's an all-star cast.
It really is, yeah.
But as you say, it wasn't the case then. Francis Coppola obviously believes, as I do, that nepotism begins at home, because that's his sister, Talia Shire, in a major co-starring role. And his father, Carmine Coppola, added to Nino Rota's already beautiful score some themes of his own. And apparently his baby daughter, Sophia, today a major filmmaker, is seen in the baptismal scene. It goes on and on like that.
I don't think anyone has a problem with Nepo babies when they turn out to be Sofia Coppola or Nicolas Cage, who was Coppola's nephew, Jason Schwartzman, who is another one of his.
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
Well, we'll leave aside Sophia's performance in Godfather 3 for another discussion.
another discussion we may never have. Can we talk about Marlon Brando a bit? Because Brando, of course, is regarded as someone who basically changed the face of acting, certainly changed the face of American acting when he came onto the scene in the 1950s. But by the time we reached The Godfather, the time we reached the early 1970s, he's not really on anyone's wish list, even though he's regarded as this fantastic actor. But no one wanted him to play Don Vito.
No, and Coppola had to put his own career on the line, essentially, because he didn't have any clout. He was still a relative newcomer, and Paramount was not 100% sold on him. So here he went to the mat. He went to bat, whichever
analogy we want to use.
Prefer. It was, yeah. And I'm not a sports guy, but he went to bat for Marlon Brando and also for Al Pacino, who was a total unknown except to theatergoers in New York. He made one film at this time, and he was not confident. He was acting out of tremendous insecurity, a deep well of insecurity. And the only one cheering him on was his director, Francis Coppola, whose job was also on the line.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't invent a story like this, given the happy ending that it has. And Coppola was a very determined guy, and remains so today. Look at what's happening with Megalopolis and the way he's backing it up with everything he's got, not just financially, creatively, promotionally. He's the same Coppola, the same dreamer who made Tucker the Man in His Dream.
That's right, yeah.
No wonder he related to that character.
I was looking back at his career or thinking about his career, and I mean, it's really not even ebbs and flows or peaks and valleys, but when he swings big. He's like, if I'm going to make a movie about organized crime, I'm making the movie about organized crime. If I'm making a war movie, I'm making the war movie. There are very few Saturday night programmers in his body of work. I mean, there's stuff like The Rainmaker and Jack and Gardens of Stone, which are perfectly good movies, but most of them are either wildly experimental or just incredible operatic masterpieces. He doesn't think small.
No, he never has. He unified two giant plots of land of wine growing country in Napa Valley that had been separated like 100 years ago, and reunited them. He just thinks differently than you and I.
Yeah.
And I don't think he wants to fail, but he's willing to fail.
Which is great.
In order to take that big swing that we're talking about. And it was a big swing to do The Godfather. Actually, one account that I read in the most recent book about him by my friend Sammy Wasson.
I've got that. Is it a good book?
It's very good. It's a great read. You'll learn things from page 1 to the very end of the book. Coppola was disparaged by his parents when he was growing up. His older brother, Augie, was the favorite son. And Francis, who was sickly as a boy, was one that they had absolutely no belief in, no faith in. And with that background, he approached filmmaking and became one of the most daring American filmmakers who ever lived. He not only dared on his own behalf, but he dared on behalf of his protege, George Lucas, put himself on the line. Again, when George Lucas was going to make American Graffiti, Francis had to sort of guarantee American Graffiti would turn out to the studio's satisfaction. If anything had gone wrong on that film, and nothing did, but if anything had, Francis had to go in and literally take his place and provide any shortfall of money. And when he took The Godfather, he thought he was selling out. He actually believed that he was selling out and that this was not the personal kind of movie he wanted to make, and swore up and down he would never do it again until he did.
Yeah. I'm going to play very, very amateur psychologist here, but hearing that about his upbringing, it almost sounds like he was the Fredo of the Coppola family. And that's why you get, I think if anyone else is handling The Godfather, Fredo becomes even more of a butt of a joke, or he becomes, they play up the weak aspect of that, but there's a real sympathy that Fredo is afforded, at least in this movie, and even in Godfather 2. Even though they acknowledge, and look, a lot of that has to go to John Cazale as well, which is, that guy just never missed. He just gave incredible performances.
What a wonderful actor, and what a tragedy that we lost him so young.
Yeah, and just a 5-film body of work. But, I think there are also aspects of Don Vito in him as this sort of benevolent, overseer of things. There's the steely pragmatist of Michael in Coppola as well. Like I said, I'm very much projecting here, but I love the idea that all these aspects of all these characters are maybe embodied in the one person who's overseeing The Godfather and the Godfather saga.
And who could have predicted that this film, which was seen as an underdog by Paramount, would not only become the highest grossing film up to that date in history, but would yield 2 sequels, and that the second one would be regarded as perhaps the best sequel ever made.
It's a question that gets asked a lot. If you're a Godfather or Godfather 2 person, I think there are Godfather 3 people, and we will talk about that in a moment. But I mean, Dando was asking before we started recording, we were talking about both films, and I said to him, I think Godfather 2 might be the better film. I think Godfather 1 is the one that you enjoy more.
That's an interesting distinction. Well, one of the things I felt while I was watching it again on a big screen at Paramount last year, having just been introduced by Mr. Coppola and the late James Caan and Talia Shire. We were in the Paramount Studio Theater, which is a really lovely auditorium, great place to see a movie. And I started looking around in the Christmas sequence outside Radio City Music Hall. I started looking around to see if there were any giveaway details, anachronisms, things that shouldn't have been in a scene set in 1940s. No, you can't find anything out of place. There's nothing out of place. There's nothing that hasn't been seen to. There's no detail that hasn't been attended to perfection, to absolute perfection.
I would counter that there is one thing, but I think this kind of adds to the legend and the wonder of it all as well. Given that we can retool almost anything these days with CGI and whatever, and Coppola's protege, George Lucas, has certainly done that. Where Sonny, James Caan's Sonny, is going to town on Carlo, there's clearly a scene where he's taking a swing at him. It looks like Carlo's been hit. He really hasn't. Given the chance, Leonard, would you go in with some technical tools and make it so Sonny hits Carlo, or do we keep it in as like, oh look, it happened. It's part of the magic of The Godfather.
I wouldn't touch a frame.
Absolutely right.
I would. That's me. I wouldn't touch a frame. Just to a young person seeing it for the first time with fresh eyes, maybe he or she would have a different point of view, or wouldn't be as reverential toward it. I don't feel reverential. I just feel it's a great movie. Leave it alone. It's
exactly how I feel. You mentioned The Offer before, and this sort of leads into that scene as well, involving James Caan and Gianni Russo, who plays Carlo. They mentioned it in The Offer that Gianni Russo was kind of a dick. He was apparently quite mean towards Talia Shire, and not the best person to be around. And apparently Jimmy Caan, who had a hot temper in real life as well, wasn't acting all that much when that scene happened. Do you know if that's actually true?
I don't know. I know that James Caan was an impulsive fellow. There are many first-hand accounts I've heard. Oh, not second-hand, but first-hand accounts told to me by friends and colleagues of his impulsive nature. And I met him casually a few times, and he was nice, and we had brief but interesting chats. But I know that he was mercurial. Maybe that's a good word, mercurial.
Certainly is. Do you have a favorite character in this movie? I mean, it's a sprawling family saga, and we get to see it from so many perspectives. Is there someone that you really key into, or really identify with, or really follow whenever you watch The Godfather?
No, one of the marvels of this movie is that it is an ensemble movie. Mm. It is not a Marlon Brando movie. It's not an Al Pacino movie, not a Robert Duvall movie. It's an ensemble, and each member of that ensemble gets his or her moment in the sun, as well as a complete start to finish biographical arc, if you will. There was some question as to who would play the pop singer, Johnny Fontaine, who was ostensibly modeled after Frank Sinatra, which has been denied up and down and backwards and forwards by all involved in the film, and by Mario Puzo, who wrote the book. Yeah. Al Martino was an Italian-American pop singer, so he was obvious casting for that part. but he acquits himself well, and he fulfills the needs of that character.
Sure.
And the part that he plays. I'll tell you an unforgettable moment in my life. I went to see this movie by myself at the Rialto Theater in Ridgefield Park, New Jersey. And I was sitting by myself, and there were two girls, teenage girls, sitting behind me. And as the scene opened with John Marley as the studio chief who has not been intimidated by a visit from messenger of Don Corleone, one of them says to the other, "Oh, this is where the horse's head gets cut off."
Why would you do that?
Why would you do that? But I hadn't read the book. I subsequently read the book after having seen the movie and loved the book. It was still a stimulating experience to read that novel, even knowing what I now knew from seeing the movie. But I didn't need those teenage girls to absolutely spill the beans at that moment. And John Marley is one of a handful of really good character actors who were cast. Richard Conte, of course, Sterling Hayden, these people of long experience, and some new faces at the time, like Abe Vigoda, and so many others that we could talk about.
It's something I read about The Godfather ages ago, and it makes a whole lot of sense that Coppola was really, really savvy in his casting, particularly of these supporting roles and bit parts. They've all got really distinctive faces. They're people you don't necessarily forget even after seeing them for the first time, because this has got a lot of characters in it. You've got a lot of people going back and forth. You know, it's like, oh, okay, no, that's that guy. Oh, it's the tall guy and the short, fat guy. That's Clemenza and Tessio.
The faces are just great. Richard Castellano, who had a brief flurry of notoriety because of his casting, his perfect casting in this movie, was one beneficiary of Coppola's sharp eye. And Coppola's casting director, Fred Roos, who was also a producer in his own right, and he just passed away in the past year.
That's right.
Had a resume to beat the band of people that he discovered and nurtured their careers, starting with Harrison Ford and continuing down the line for many, many years. The woman who plays Don Corleone's wife, the mother at the wedding that opens the movie, was played by Morgana King, who was a cabaret performer. I knew her. I actually had a couple of her albums.
Oh, wow.
She was a singer. She had never acted in a film before, and I don't think ever did again. But something about her essence or the vibe that she gave off appealed to Coppola as an appropriate partner for Marlon Brando's character. So, I mean, that's a gift. Casting directors do amazing work, and they're all very nonchalant about it, but it's a really interesting, intuitive part of show business that doesn't get paid attention to very much.
I don't think you see that any more than you do in the Godfather movies. I mean, even down to one-line players or bit players or whatever, they're all vivid and they all add something to the mosaic. It's something I wanted to ask about because I wondered who your favourite bit player was in The Godfather, because I was thinking about Enzo the Baker when I watched it last night. He doesn't have a whole lot to do, but he's part of probably one of my favourite moments in movie history when Michael correctly intuits there's going to be the attack on his father in the hospital. He acts like he's got a gun. He recruits Enzo into doing it. This scared kid who doesn't know anything, doesn't know any better. Enzo's hands are shaking after it all happens. He's trying to light a cigarette and he can't. Michael lights his cigarette. He knows his hands aren't shaking. He realizes, oh, this is what I'm made for. This is what I was born to do. I think it's just such a beautiful bit of shorthand. But it's a lovely performance by the kid playing Enzo. I was wondering who added the most texture out of those sort of little bit players for you.
Oh gosh, well, Richard Castellano is the one who comes to mind because he made such a big impression on me and a lot of other people back then. And he stays in my mind. He's remained on my radar all this time. I'm thinking about Al Pacino, though, because he had the most to prove and the most to lose in the making of this movie. His character is the protagonist of the film. Yeah. He's the one who has the biggest journey to make, figuratively speaking. Although there's also a literal journey.
Yeah. Because
he's been away as a soldier in World War II, and he's come home and comes home in time for family wedding and is welcomed back by his father, by his mother, by his family, and then is, well, what's the word? Co-opted, steered, shanghaied into the family business.
Although how much of that is him being swayed in that direction is how much of it is him recognizing this is the path he's meant to be on? Because he really does take it to it like a duck to water, doesn't he?
Well, he does. And the moment that he proves himself is when he goes to that restaurant and they have planted a gun in the men's room in this ancient restaurant. And he has to not only find this gun that has been taped to the wall of the water tank, but come back into the restaurant, fire the gun successfully, and then he's told he's got to drop the gun immediately. Shoot, take the gun, leave the cannoli. And by God, he does it. And I don't know many movies where you feel like you're in the shoes of a character at a crucial moment like that, at a life-defining moment like that. But you feel like you are experiencing it through him. And that's an amazing thing to pull off.
Yeah, well, again, it's a beautiful concert of an actor really doing, I won't say a lot with a little, but I think nowadays we tend to regard Pacino as someone who really plays to the back row, but he was so known for his stillness when back in his early roles, and particularly as Michael Corleone. He's doing so much, expressing so much while not actually doing very, very much. But then Coppola behind the camera and all his technical people, incredible use of sound in that scene, just the sound of the train, this sort of ambient noise on the soundtrack as well, building up until the gunshots. It's beautiful, beautiful scene.
We haven't mentioned the many collaborators that Coppola worked with, and we don't have time to list them all, but we should mention his amazing cinematographer, Gordon Willis.
The Prince of Darkness. The
Prince of Darkness, as he was widely known, who didn't get a lot of respect from his West Coast colleagues. He was a New York-based DP, director of photography, and he liked to use natural light, even if it was a little dim in the room. That's what he wanted to capture. He wanted to capture the authenticity of a scene, the way it would look to the naked eye, or make it more artful by imposing lights where he wanted them to be. And Paramount hated the rushes. This is yet another bone of contention. Not only don't we like this guy who's directing the movie, we don't like the way the movie looks. Oh, my goodness. And it's true. It's absolutely true. One nice anecdote in Sam Wasson's book, which I want to plug again because it's so good.
This is called The Path to Paradise, by the way.
Yes, The Path to Paradise.
Link in the show notes.
Coppola had been a budding screenwriter when he took the job to direct The Godfather. And on a Sunday night, when his anxiety level had to be right at the peak, he won an Academy Award for co-adapting the screenplay of Patton with George C. Scott. And the next morning, one of his buddies said to him, "I think your job is safe now." They're not about to fire an Oscar nominee.
Is it true also that the studio was very keen on getting rid of Pacino, replacing him with someone else, because all the scenes that they had seen of Pacino were him as kind of like young, fresh-faced Michael, not really projecting any authority so Coppola had to show that scene in the restaurant where he pulls the trigger on McCluskey and Sollozzo.
He deliberately changed the shooting schedule to showcase Pacino doing something proactive instead of being the passive character that he is for much of that running time. And that's what sealed the deal. I think about the impact of movies and the ripple effect that movies have. I find myself using every now and then the term consigliere.
Oh, yeah.
Which I'd never heard of before. In a rough translation, it means counselor, advisor. And that's the part that Robert Duvall plays so well. Tom Hagen, the outsider who is considered like family, but not family. Emphatically not family. They trust him, they love him, but they hold him at a certain arm's length distance.
It's always a
very interesting character.
Yeah. Oh, for mine, yeah, Duvall's kind of the stealth most valuable player of this movie. It's an incredible performance with a really interesting character.
Yes.
You feel the tension that he has in being a pivotal part of this family, but still not part of the family. The pride and that he has in doing a good job for his adoptive father. I was rewatching it last night. I sort of had my eyes on Duval a lot. I mean, that the scene he has with John Marley as Jack Waltz, that whole sequence is fantastic. But later on when he comes back and they're sort of trying to make the decision whether or not to go into the drug business, and, Sonny doesn't really have a lot to add. He's like, a lot of money in that white powder. But it's like Tom Hagen gives like a PowerPoint presentation about it. He's talking about, well, here's the pros, here's the cons. And he's got this little smile on his face at the end. He's like, I think I did a pretty good job in hyping up the drug business to Don Vito. No, I love Robert Duvall. I mean, but I really love him as Tom Hagen. I think he's fantastic. You mentioned the music earlier, and that's something that's really lingered on as well. I mean, you talk about phrases like, take the gun, leave the cannoli, or consigliere, or make you an offer I can't refuse. But the music, it seems to have just seeped into so many things.
Well, that's because it was in the hands of a master. Nino Rota was a brilliant film composer that we associate most closely with Federico Fellini, for whom he crafted so many wonderful scores, starting in the 1950s when Fellini was coming into his own. And Coppola couldn't have made a better choice to literally underscore his film. And his father came from the same European musical tradition and was able to enhance and augment what Nino Rota did.
Speaking of influence, this seems to have bled into, I guess, other parts of popular culture, but certainly in terms of organized crime movies, mob movies, mafia movies, what have you. Everyone seems to kiss the ring of The Godfather in one way or another. Either that or or of Goodfellas, which seem to be not the polar opposites, but the alpha and omega of mob movies.
That's true. And yet those two filmmakers couldn't be more different. Martin Scorsese and Francis Coppola are both masters of the craft and the art. They're both great storytellers who are at home, obviously, in this milieu. Yeah. Whether they like that or not, they're kind of stuck with it. It brings out the best in them, which is why those films, Goodfellas and to some degree Casino, and The Godfather 1 and Godfather Part 2, to a much lesser degree, Godfather Part 3, stand out. Coppola made other great films. The Conversation is a great American film. I don't think anybody would argue that point. Apocalypse Now, whether you think it's great or not, is a hugely influential and indubitably original movie. It's a one of a kind. There's nothing else quite like it. And The Outsiders, as you say, he's done other work in other genres quite successfully. But The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2, the miracle sequel that no one saw coming, are in a class by themselves.
You mentioned the Outsiders. I mean, I love that 1-2 punch they did of The Outsiders and Rumblefish, two incredibly different movies from the same, not source material, but certainly from the same author. One is this, again, if he's going to make a war movie, he makes the war movie. If he's going to make a teen movie, he's going to make the teen movie. I mean, it feels like an absolute epic. And then almost back to back with that, he makes this avant-garde teen movie in Rumblefish. Is one of my favorite movies of the 80s. It's so stylish, so heartfelt and strange, but it's just an incredible film.
And again, he called on his frequent collaborator, Fred Roos, to find fresh, young talent to fill all those parts. And he did that to a fairly well.
Who's he find? Matt Dillon, Patrick Swayze, Tom Cruise, Emilio Estevez, Rob Lowe, Ralph Macchio, C. Thomas Howell, Diane Lane.
Diane Lane.
Incredible. This is something we might close out with on every episode when we're talking about classic movies, but The Godfather, is it of its time? Is it timeless? Is it both?
I think it is timeless.
Yeah.
I feel emboldened to say that, Guy, because I just saw it again recently, not having watched it, certainly on the theater screen, in many, many years. And it seemed to just flow by. Those 3 hours took me on a magic carpet ride, away from myself, away from any thoughts of what I was doing that day or what I was going to be doing later after the screening. It enveloped me in a way that movies rarely do. old or new. And so to me, that makes it ageless.
That's right. When you're watching The Godfather, you're watching The Godfather. You're not checking your phone, are you? You're not doing anything else.
No.
You're in
it. No, you're not. The crossword puzzle has to wait. What do they call it? They call that second screen
Second
now.
Screening. And
Right?
unfortunately, I think Netflix has sort of built that into the model.
Yeah. Well, if you've never seen it and you're counting on second screening in Godfather, think again.
It's not something that we would ever really fully entertain, but a reboot, a remake, this seems like such a sprawling saga. Is there anyone that you would, was there any way that someone could take the Corleone saga and expand on it, run with it, take it into the future?
I'd like to think no. And the best argument I can muster for that opinion is The Godfather Part 3.
Yeah.
Where Francis Coppola himself took on that challenge and to a degree failed. It's not a bad movie. It's not an uninteresting movie. It's just not in the same league as those two remarkable films he made in the early 70s.
Especially with the recut version, it's called Godfather 3 Coda, The Death of Michael Corleone.
Yeah.
It makes some interesting changes and actually makes it, I don't know, a little more watchable for mine. It's unfortunately, you're right, it does suffer from Sofia Coppola, a fantastic filmmaker in her own right, but at that stage of the game, not much of an actor.
No. And who's to say, would the film have been markedly better if Winona Ryder had been able to fulfill her contract and play that character? I don't know. At the time, I thought Andy Garcia should have gotten an Oscar for having to work opposite her.
Yeah, that's true.
What a challenge that must have been.
All right, Godfather, we'll leave it as it is. Untouchable.
Untouchable is right.
Well, thank you guys for checking out this episode of The Movie Guide. Hope you enjoyed it. The Godfather, an absolute classic. We're going to be doing another classic next week. We're not going to tell you what it is right now. We're going to decide during the week, that's why. And you'll find it in your feeds next week here on the podcast. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Leonard, once again, thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Guy, of course.
Thank you very much.
And we'll catch you all in the next episode of The Movie Guide.